Thinking about selling your business? As a business owner, this is probably one of the biggest decisions you're going to make. Here's how to do it successfully. For most business owners, the exit or sale of their business is probably one of their long-term goals. And people do have different goals. Some people want to just do a straightforward exit, so sell it and walk away. Other people might consider it an employee ownership trust, whereby they sell the business to the employees. Others might consider a succession plan, so they might consider a management buyout and using the management within the business to buy the business, and therefore the business continues that way. So for everybody, they might have different motivations, but today we're going to look specifically at selling your business. So the first thing to think about is, what is your exit route? Who are you potentially going to be selling your business to? And at an early stage, you should be thinking about who would be likely suitors to buy your business. And this might be people in related industry. It could even be private equity firms or venture capitalist firms. But it's worth just writing down, a potential list of suitors, and also keep an eye on the market as well. So what are other firms doing? When they're exiting, who are they potentially selling to? Because that often gives an indication of what the trends are in your particular industry and who's potentially buying companies. At the moment in the accounting industry, for example, there's a lot of private equity movement. In the industry, a lot of private equity money coming in and buying up accountancy firms. So look at your industry and decide, what is going on, and who is a potential buyer in that industry. So when you've made your mind up that you are going to sell your business, what do you need to do? The first thing is making sure that your business is, investor ready and potentially saleable. And there's lots of hygiene factors that you need to consider, but you can expect the potential firm to be doing detailed due diligence on your company. And that due diligence is going to look at all aspects of your company. It's going to look at legal, it's going to look at HR, it's going to look at finances, it's going to look at commercial, it's going to look at contracts. There's a whole list of due diligence questions that potentially will come your way if you're looking to sell your business. And basically what you can do is you can go online and you can just download example due diligence questions, and you can just download those and see the types of questions that are going to be asked. But it's not a bad exercise to work through those questions, because it's then going to start you thinking, look, where are my gaps? Where are the things that I need to think about actually filling now, before you get to that point that you're looking to exit. The other thing to consider is making sure that your financials are in good order. So, a potential company that's going to look to acquire you, they're going to be asking for your statutory accounts, they're going to be asking for your latest management accounts, and they want to be able to see that you've got good financial discipline in your organisation. So, can you produce those accounts? Are they accurate? Do they give the investor what they need to show them what's going on in the business financially? The other thing to think about is a confidential information memorandum, bit of a mouthful, or a CIM report. And this is really, a document that you're going to share with potential buyers, which is going to explain the story behind the business. So what is the business all about? And it is going to include, the numbers. It is going to include, how the business has performed financially. But it also needs to tell the story of what you're doing in the business. What problems are you trying to solve? What makes you unique? So it is, it's potentially a sales document as well. So there's an element of storytelling within that SIM document. So you've got to, again, look online. There's plenty of guidance online about how or what you should put into those types of documents. But make sure that you have a SIM, a confidential information memorandum that you can show to prospective buyers, and make sure and test it with people as well. Test it with trusted friends and colleagues to make sure that what you're saying is accurate and does sell your business. Third thing to think about is business value. So that valuation is going to be really, really important. How much you want for your business. And in some industries, the valuation is a little bit easy to determine, because there is a ready market for those types of business. Again, accountancy, for example, accountants firms come up quite often for sale, and therefore there is quite a well-trodden path or a well-trodden valuation metric, for these types of business. So have a think about the valuation. Again, there's plenty of resources there that will help you with valuation, but it wouldn't hurt to do that professionally. If you get a professional valuation done, they will go away, they'll look at all of the details for your business, how it's performed, they'll look at the wider context of how the business is trading, the environment in which it's trading, and then they'll come back to a formal valuation. And then again, if you could show that to a potential buyer, it just demonstrates that that you've got this done professionally. It's not just done by potentially the business owner. It's done potentially by an accountant or somebody that's professionally trained, and therefore it's kind of separating you from that valuation. Say, look, this is what I've been, I've instructed this person to do a valuation. They've come back with these figures, and these are the figures that I'm expecting for my business based on this valuation. But make sure that valuation is done correctly. Ultimately, in terms of selling your business, it's like selling a house. What you get for your business will be what somebody's prepared to pay for that business and what you're prepared to accept for that business. And often there's a meeting in the middle, a negotiation. It will potentially start high, and then there'll be a series of negotiations, and you sort of meet in the middle. And that's the way it tends to work in reality. The key thing to think about when you're selling your business is about your role as a business owner. What are you doing in your business? And if your business is entirely dependent on you, then you're going to reduce your valuation, because if someone's looking to buy it, they're going to say, well, we're going to have to replace you with another manager or another director, and therefore there's going to be a cost associated with that. So the more that you can demonstrate that the business operates without you, and you are just acting purely in that leadership role as opposed to hands-on in the day-to-day workings, and potentially the valuation is going to be higher because it's not so dependent on you. The other risk is, if it is dependent on you, the buyer's going to say to you, well, we want you to come with the sale. And that might be fine, right? You might say, I'm happy to do that. But often, the lock-in can be quite a long period. It might be 24 months, 36 months, 2 years, 3 years. Lock-in, if the business is heavily dependent. If it's not dependent on you, then the answer to that is potentially easier. You can say, well, it's not dependent on me, I don't need to be locked in. And therefore it does give you more options around that potential lock-in there. The other thing to consider is the handover. It's really, really important that you do consider how the business is going to be handed over. We often see acquisitions fail because they haven't done enough work around the handover and what it's going to look like when that business is sold and when the new business acquires potentially your business. And this point is really, really important. You need to have a detailed document that outlines all your processes, so it's done in a controlled and smooth way, and therefore all aspects of the business, whether that be HR, payroll, accounting, all of the back office functions, as well as all the commercial functions. You need to have a process document about how that's going to be handed over, and therefore when the acquirer comes in, there should be a smooth roadmap of how they're going to deliver and how they're going to pick up the new organisation and make that acquisition successful. Often we see that bit is almost an afterthought. It's not done properly, it's not done with enough depth, and the risk therefore is that when that business is acquired, the acquisition can potentially fail. And it can fail for a myriad of reasons. It might be financial, quite often it's people related. There's just not, people don't feel bought into the process, they haven't had the process explained to them, and therefore that can bring an acquisition to a halt pretty quickly. So do think about the handover, think about the people, think about the processes within that, and make sure you've got a detailed plan. And that would, and if you demonstrate that to a buyer as well, it's also going to add potential value as well, to show that you thought about the process and thought about how they're going to pick up from day one of that acquisition, how they're going to pick up the business and how they're going to run with it. So hopefully those ideas have been useful to you. If you are thinking about your exit plan and exit strategy, do please get in touch. If this has been useful, please like and subscribe to our channel.